Hi, and welcome to your guide to buying and renovating a house. And our guide today is Jared. Jared, thanks for being here.
Justin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. So Jared has personally renovated a couple houses that he and his family live in. And so he's going to give us the inside scoop on that today. But first, so we can get to know Jared a little bit better. Jared, if you could be any neighborhood in the entire world, what neighborhood would you be? What would be your spirit neighborhood?
I don't know that many neighborhoods outside of Atlanta, so adding the in the world isn't super helpful. I would say I'm probably where I need to be. I would probably say Grant Park in Atlanta.
Nice. How come?
Yeah, I'd say for a while there it was a little like under the radar. Not as well known as maybe some of the East Side Beltline neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And I think that lines up with me well, but has all the stuff, walkable. The houses are cool. The people are great. And I don't know, it just connects with me well.
I love it. Awesome. So Jared, you have renovated a house both in Grant Park and in Ormwood Park. And those have both been pretty big renovations. Before we get into the details of how to do it, why don't you tell your story a little bit on those two houses?
Yeah. And actually really thinking about it, I mean, I've owned 3 homes. I've lived in 3 homes and I've actually done some sort of renovation to all of them. And so I've done a little bit of trial and error. So maybe the people watching this can learn from the good and the bad. So the very first one I did was I would say the light cosmetic, bathroom tile, kitchen counters, kitchen floor, things like that. Just enough to like disrupt your life, but not enough to move out of the house, basically. So we can get into that one. Then the next time we lived in the house, but did an addition. So all the work was outside the house, which was better from a life disruption, but still not disruption free. And then this last one was a big one. The house was not in any way, shape, or form livable. So we did the whole thing, top to bottom, and then moved in at the end.
So that was the only one where you didn't have to live there while you were actually doing the work.
Yeah. So it scored well on the life disruption. No doubt about that.
Well, you've mentioned life disruption on all of them. Which one had the least amount of life disruption? Because that is a factor to renovating a house, is you do have to do something even if you're not actually doing the work yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to know that all of these occurred at different stages of my life. So for example, like renovating the first house, I was single, living by myself. So, being without a kitchen for 2 or 3 weeks, not ideal, but I was already eating out a lot anyway. And so it wasn't, nearly as an inconvenience as now married with 2 kids. I mean, that would basically be impossible. No, there's no basically to it. That would be impossible. But that was the most cost effective. And so from that standpoint, it was the least disruptive to my cash flow, which was nice. And then the next one we did, we were married, but no kids. And so, that disrupted our lives a little bit in the yard and that kind of thing, made the backyard unusable for 4 or 5 months, which again, would probably not fly now, but at the time it was fun. And then, this last one, it actually worked out really well. If you can afford to have 2 places or don't mind living in 2 places, paying for 2 places at once, it worked out really well.
Because you still lived in your old house, had this house renovated, then sold that house and moved directly in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so, it was, I learned a lot from the first 2 and realized that like sometimes my theory was you don't really save as much money as you might think by living there, kind of working around it or whatever. And so like, you might as well, while they're at it, they might as well do everything. And then I also learned that like kind of the bigger the project, the more accurate the quotes have been for me.
Because now that's interesting. Well, I don't think most people would assume that. Why do you think that's been?
Yeah. Well, I think and just talking to builders and the contractors in each project as well, it's like, I think that once they're there, so the second house we did an addition, there were other things to the main house that we want to do or that we were tempted to do. And so it kind of became like, oh, well, while you're at it, can you add this, this, and this? For the last one, we knew that everything had to be done. Like there was no not doing anything.
Unless you were putting a pool in the backyard, there was nothing to add.
So everything was worst case scenario. And No, there were a couple of things that like one worked out in our favor, one didn't, so it ended up evening out. But yeah, so there were a couple of things that could have gone either way. But by and large, I mean, we knew we needed a new roof. We knew we needed, all new systems, all new plumbing, all new electrical. There were just fewer things that were up in the air.
Yeah. So let's start from somebody from the step one in the process. So say you're considering this, you're considering buying a house and then renovating the house. What do we need to do at the beginning to evaluate that decision and get started?
Yeah, I would start with kind of setting a goal around it, or really understanding why you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it you're doing this financially to get extra equity into a home? Are you doing it because you just want to have a project and you like the design and the aesthetic and you want to put your stamp on something? Are you doing it to maybe get into a neighborhood that you couldn't otherwise afford or finished, for a house that's already been renovated? So I would really dig deep on why you're doing it. And, for me, I think you really need like two of those boxes to be checked, because it can be less time, but it just, it's a time commitment. There's no doubt about it. I've figured out ways to minimize that, I think. But that ultimately means that you're trusting and relying on other people as well. And so it just depends on your comfort level with that. So yeah, you got to want it, and you got to, it's got to make sense on a few different levels, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So once you figure out, hey, I do want to do this, we have a handful of reasons that we want to do it. What do you then do to actually go about doing it and either finding the house or buying the house and getting everything in motion?
Yeah. I mean, I really think, location. I think it's really identify where you want to be. Because the home search is going to look a little bit different, and working with your agent, it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to be a deeper dive in a narrower area, most likely. And, you're going to have to be patient, because the good deals where it makes sense to constructions, it's more expensive now than it used to be, certainly. And so, it's just going to take a little bit of time. And so mentally preparing yourself for maybe a little bit longer of a home search.
So then you're out, you're finding that house, and to your point, yes, I mean, sometimes it seems like we'll find something for somebody right away or out of the blue. And other times the search can go on for a while because they're not building fixer-uppers. There's not like, hey, there's a whole neighborhood of 50 fixer-uppers to pick from here. It's
right.
You have a little bit less choice. So
right.
you're out there looking, you find something that you think may work. What's the difference in evaluating that than evaluating a house that you're just going to buy and it's move-in ready?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the money comes into this equation pretty quickly. And so just like with any home search, you wanted to determine your what we would call in this scenario, your all-in home budget. And so, the cost of the home plus the cost of the expected construction, that number needs to be obviously within your total budget, what you feel comfortable with from a monthly payment perspective and from a cash perspective.
Yeah.
Because the cash can come into play. The loans are available, but they're not quite as straightforward. And so there's a variety of different ways that you can finance these. But certainly having extra cash is kind of the constant among all of the loan options. And yeah, I mean, I think when you're evaluating opportunities, I think it's, I kind of think the worse, the better, honestly, in some ways.
What do you mean by that? The worst what?
Yeah, cosmetically. I mean, yeah. I mean, the dream is what we would call grandma's house, something that has been well maintained. So, the foundation's in good shape. There's minimal, or, the water in the crawl space and basement is always something that's super expensive to fix. And so, the foundation, the general layout is good. You might need to expand. But, those types of things, lot and location are obviously, location even within a neighborhood are important. Because those are things that you can't change or are just expensive to fix. And so, yeah, really just defining kind of what you want at the end. And then, if there's a million different things to think about, but if it is a historic neighborhood, then, you need to understand what's doable from that perspective as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, if you're going to get through this effort, you want the end product to be what you want, right? I mean, you don't want to go through all this effort and be like, oh, this isn't exactly what I want.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I think, really having a good picture of what you're after. And I think probably for most people, really making sure that it's not available already, unless you just really want a project. Because, sometimes sometimes the bids come back a good bit higher. And so at the end of the day, it's really not that much different than just paying for one that's already, obviously that's a case by case basis, but it's really not sometimes that different from just paying for one that's already done.
Yeah. And on the financial side, I mean, one thing that people love about this is sometimes you can move in with a lot of equity where the value of the house is less than what you're in it for. But we've
Right.
also seen it turn out in the opposite direction, right? Where people are in it well above what they could have bought a similar house on the market for. How does that happen?
Yeah, I think I see that a lot with people in new construction as well, as like they want to do their own design instead of just, play the hits. Just there's a reason that a lot of the houses are similar. It's because that's what most people want. And they're probably, they've figured out a way to build those efficiently. And so, yeah, I've seen some people that want to do their own kind of architectural drawings and have some designs that end up getting more expensive. And then, from an appraisal standpoint, not everyone likes it. And so that can create that issue. I know it's hard, but you gotta work with people, I think, who know the market and the neighborhood and make sure that they can help you have some restraint on, where to spend your money, where does it make you feel good and where do you like it? But also, like, at what point do you need to stop unless you plan on living in that house forever?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the timeline is also a little bit different. And obviously the timeline varies a lot between you're doing the work while you're in the house or you're gutting an old house. But talk a little bit about the timeline, both for purchase and closing and getting it done, because that's not the same as just, hey, I'm buying this house and I'm moving in 30 days.
Right. Yeah. I mean, depending on pretty much any, I would say, substantial construction project. So both in the second case where we did the addition and in the third case where we did the full house, those had to be, we needed plans, we needed permits, budgets, did some form of a construction loan in both cases. From all of that to moving in, I mean, for the second one, it probably took about 6 to 8 months. And for the third one, I mean, from the day we bought the house to the day we moved in was right about a year. I mean, and so, a month or for maybe when we saw the house. So a month or two to close, a month or two to kind of like figure out what we want, get the plans drawn, a month or two for permitting. The actual construction on the second one, was done in like 5 or 6 months, which was actually pretty good. But I mean, if that gives you 6 months is good, if that gives you any indication of how long it's going to take.
Yeah. So it can take a while. So this is something, like you said, you really have to invest in, because even if you have, and I know you had this, I mean, you've had great builders and designers and great help with it. And I have too on the projects that we've done, but there's still a good amount of investment of your own time to it. And so I'll leave everybody with this. I mean, what would be the one secret or insider piece of advice that you would share from doing this a couple times?
Yeah, doing one is hard. I mean, definitely surrounding yourself with people at every step of the way. And I think you and I, from personal trial and error and that sort of thing, have found a lot of those great people. And trust. The more you trust them, the better it's probably going to turn out. I think in this market, though, this may be a little bit of a secret as well. As we've talked about this as a team, and I've seen articles about this as well. As more and more millennials are buying homes, and more of them want them to be perfect. And so there's kind of been some opportunity. I've seen some sellers benefit from this before they list their home, and I've seen some buyers benefit from this. Is a lot of times, I mean, truly just changing a few light fixtures, painting the inside and the outside, and then maybe painting the cabinets or doing like something that really would only take a month or two. You go in the house and it looks drastically different, and it is obviously a lot less of a emotional and financial and time commitment than doing the whole thing. So I would say, if you want to do the whole thing, we can help you. And in general, if there's a will, there's a way on both the time and the money. But I think there's opportunity out there to get some of the same benefits without doing the whole project as well.
Yeah, there is definitely opportunity out there. And I think that's a great way to wrap this up. That's kind of what this is all about. I mean, opportunity to hopefully create equity, and also opportunity to make it your own and get what you want in your house. Because let's face it, I mean, we're living there every day. And so it's nice to have it the way that we like to have it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, of course, everyone goes over budget, and we probably did too. I had opinions on things that I didn't know I would have opinions on. But the quality, I mean, we love the house. I mean, that's the one thing, is that we definitely, it's as good or better than we thought. And so, yeah, I mean, that makes it all worth it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would echo that from all the houses that I think we've lived in 4 houses that we've renovated. Exact same thing. Have absolutely loved living in all of them, and it's hard to put a price on that. So, Jared, thanks for being our guide today on buying and renovating a house. We really appreciate you. And everyone, thanks for watching. We will see you at the next one.